Hey everyone, welcome to another tutorial, and this is actually part 3 of how I created this base, and spoiler is that it worked. So there were a few points along the way where I wasn't sure if this project would work or how it would turn out, but I'm pleased to say I'm very happy with the result. I really did have this vision of a super mossy bank and this river with loads of water effects and stones running through it. And I'd done stuff like that before, but I wanted this to be really nice. And I'd done this splash effect before, but probably not as elaborate or important as this. So just a smaller scale, and this is a 54mm miniature. So yeah, I wanted to get it a quite convincing height, as you can see. But yeah, I'm really happy with how it turned out. The painting of the figures and the base, and I've obviously had pictures posted on the internet, and the thing that was commented on the most was the splash, which is cool because that means people probably want to see this tutorial. So I'm happy to bring this tutorial for you today. And we'll dive in on creating this splash. It's a really versatile technique because you can use it for loads of other stuff. You can use it to make blood splashes. All you do is paint it in blood for the blood god, and that's done. And once you've been shown the basic technique of creating it with the resin and the cotton wool, which you'll see next, you'll probably be able to come up with your own ways of utilising it. But I think the unique bit of information is how we create these splashes themselves. So to create your water splash effect, you're going to need some little pots, you need a void, and you're going to need some cotton wool. And what we're going to be doing is basically spreading the cotton wool across these voids, and then we're going to be putting some resin on that cotton wool. So I'd suggest getting lots of these. The more you have, the better, because you've got to mix up some resin to do it, and it's very random, the final effect. So the more pots you have done, the better chance you have of getting some good splashes. I'll show you a little spoiler. This is what it will look like when it's done. So you'll be casting some resin across some cotton wool. We're going to use the Pebeo resin. This is the same resin we did for the rest of the base, and I really do recommend this one over some of the other resins you can get and the other water effects, because it dries absolutely rock solid, and that just means you can do these quite fragile effects, and they last, as in they won't break and they stand up tall. So I really do recommend that resin, and it's not expensive and it's easy to get hold of. So what you're going to do is unroll your cotton wool, and then this is the art. You're going to have several goes at this, I guarantee. You need to be able to spread this cotton wool. It's really tricky, and honestly it'll probably take you a few goes. I always end up with loads of these cotton wool things thrown away. I'm kind of doing this quickly just to show you, because I've actually already done some nice ones. But we're going to put it across the pot like that, and then just try and pull that apart. Once you've done this a few times and you see how the resin reacts on the cotton wool, you'll kind of know what you're looking for and how well to do this stage. You can pull across some of the cotton like this, and that'll give more things for the resin to attach to. But yeah, this is kind of an art in itself, and that's why I say just get loads of these pots and make up several, so you can just give yourself a better chance. And then once you've done that, just grab some tape, any cheap tape, and you want to just carefully keep that sturdy like that. And that's basically it. Just these are actually Citadel spray can lids, so I end up having loads of these, and I always save them because they're great for mixing resin, doing stuff like this. So actually keeping them is useful for this sort of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of basically it. Really funny technique. Hopefully it's new to some of you guys and it's unusual, you haven't seen it before. But if you keep watching the video, you'll see the results speak for themselves. There's loads of ways of making water splashes, and I can honestly say I think I've tried them all, and this is still my favourite way of doing it. And it's fun. So yeah, if you try it, let me know what you think, but I think it's really enjoyable. So once you've spread the cotton wool across, you're going to take some resin that's mixed up, and I use these little wooden sticks to stir the resin. And what we're going to do is have a little bit on the end of the stirring stick, and then very carefully we're going to move that across the cotton wool void. Now I suggest making lots of these so you can get used to it, and it really makes a difference how much you load the resin and how soft you are moving it across, and you'll get used to it and seeing how different kind of techniques can create different kinds of drips. So if you want the really thin ones that are good for kind of droplets and rain, then you have to be really gentle and just touch the kind of the really thin parts of the resin. If you want big chunky areas, then have a bit more resin and spread it across. But the cotton wool will stick to your stirring stick eventually, so it's good to just give it a wipe on the side. And you can see, you can just take your time and keep adding various little drips and stuff. Now eventually you will run out of space, and you don't want to overload each kind of cup or whatever you use with too many drips, which is why I suggest making a bunch at a time. But after a couple goes, you'll get used to it and make a judgment call. But it's all about how well you spread that cotton wool across, and you'll just get different kinds of drips and stuff. There's a bit of skill and a bit of practice, and it's kind of random too, so just make tons of them and you'll be able to find the shapes you want for sure. So this one I probably can't fit too many on now. Just check, there's a really good one I can see here in the corner. So let's try and get some resin across it. Careful. But it's quite fun, and it's super useful, and they keep kind of forever, so you could make a huge batch of them and then just, you know, store them away. So that's that done. Here's another one I did. You can see similar, and we'll come back when these are dry and see how they look. So after 24 hours, or if you can leave it longer so it's rock solid, you'll get something like this. And basically what you have to do is kind of pull out the splashes. So you can just use your fingers. But you'll get something like this. And just remove as much of the cotton wool as you can. And it really varies, which is why I did a big batch of them. But then you'll get something like that. A usable bit of rock hard resin, and it will have a really interesting kind of splash shape. So I'll pull out this big one. So this I went a bit crazy with the resin obviously, but there you can see that's a really nice one there. You have quite these kind of different drips and splashes, and this is all pretty transparent, so it's cool. And here are all the ones I gathered from the various ones I did, and basically we need to just hunt down the good ones and start adding them to our base. So I've grabbed some grey cards so you can actually see these a little better. But basically I've kind of extracted the best ones I could find, and it's just a case of finding something that's going to fit your needs. So mine is obviously on this water base, and I have the figure, let me just sort this on, is making the splash. So I want some kind of splash where the foot's hit the water and it's going to have a decent amount of height. So I want it to be dramatic without it being kind of crazy over the top, and get the width realistic. So essentially I'm just going to hunt through these and see what works. This one's pretty cool. You can see that's probably around the right sort of height. Maybe it needs to be a bit wider, and you can kind of cut and paste these together, so you don't have to just find one that's perfect. This one's pretty cool, and that's probably the perfect width, but there's not too much height to it. So yeah, basically I'll kind of go through these and make a decision, and then we'll glue them on with some super glue. So I'm going to kind of have a little think about what works best, and then we'll come back and glue them on. So you can see I've glued a couple of the cotton wool pieces here. So that's actually 3 little parts here. I'm basically just taking the tweezers, dipping them in glue, and then you just place them on here. So I have to sit and hold it for a while, so I didn't think it was worth me filming it. But I just thought I'd show you the first couple bits, and we're going to build it up gradually. So I'm going to just keep adding more, and we'll be back in a second. Okay, so I actually spent a good amount of time, maybe 45 minutes, just building this. So yeah, really took a long time to kind of cut and paste everything together. And I was trying not to use glue accelerator so it wouldn't mist too bad. But I'm really happy with it. I'll just slot the model in so you can see what it looks like. And with my reference, it looked like the front and the back didn't push out much water. So I've just kind of made it work either side. But I think from the side view, it looks really cool. So yeah, I'm really happy with that as a start. Now there's a lot of kind of loose cotton wool threads, so we have to kind of clean those up. And you can use the tweezers to kind of pull them out, which I've already done. And now what I'm going to do is actually mix up the crystal resin product, and I'm going to really carefully apply that, and that will tie everything up, and it will also help make this really strong and sturdy, and kind of fill in some of the gaps where I've put different pieces together, and it will also help make it more translucent. So I'm going to mix that up, and we'll do that now. So I've mixed up a small batch of resin, and I'm going to use a really old knackered brush, but you could just use your stirring stick or anything really. But if you do use an old brush, it's pretty much going to be done, as you're going to have resin on it, but this brush is completely dead, so I don't mind throwing it away after. And I'm going to have a tiny bit of resin on the brush and just carefully kind of fill in the gaps and apply it to any loose strands of cotton wool. And the reason I'm using this resin, again, not another easier to use product, is because it dries absolutely rock solid. So it means I can trust this quite crazy water effect. And also, if we wanted to add more, then this will be nice and solid, and we could add some further little drips and stuff, and it'll withstand it. So you can see here there's lots of stray cotton wool. It just binds it nicely together. So it's quite a lot of effort and quite a few times of mixing up the resin, but it's quite a cool effect. So, and if you want to do something like this, then I think it's worth all that effort. So this is kind of this is an important piece to me. Obviously it's the colour paint model that I really care about, so ultimately it's worth all these little extra tricks. So I'm going to carry on and finish this, and then actually leave it for a couple days to get solid, and then we'll probably start working on doing some ripples and other stuff, but we'll see what it looks like when it's dried and see how sturdy it is. So that's looking pretty good now with the resin on, and I'm just going to paint the surface a little and give it a kind of rippled effect. So if I turn it in the light, you can see what we're going for. So I'm going to just build up some subtle ripples, and we'll add to these later with some more resin, but this will build up a nice resin effect. I can't actually see it on the model because I'm holding it in the light so you can see in the camera. So I'm kind of doing it off the monitor, so that's why it's quite tricky to do. But hopefully you get the idea. You can just build up some subtle ripples, and I'll have obviously less of them further away. But that will be better than the plain surface and a bit more realistic. So when you just catch the light, you can see that little bit of rippling. And once again, this brush is going to be ruined, but I think it's cool. I think it's worth it. So now that's dried, the splash is looking pretty awesome. And you can see if I try and turn it so you can catch it in the light. There you go. You can see the ripples turned out pretty good here, but basically it's flattened off here, so I'll probably keep building up those ripples and adding to it. But the good thing of using this product for the ripples is it's highly glossy, much glossier than any of the other water products out there, so we still get that really shiny finish, which is lovely, but we've got these subtle ripples. And I think, you know, it depends all about the timing, right? Because if the splash has just hit, it's going to take a few seconds for the ripples to appear. So yeah, it's difficult to get the timing right and imagine this. But one thing about the ripple I've created is if you look from the side, it's a little straight up, so I probably want some more splashes coming out more horizontally or at more of an angle. So I think what I'll do is super glue and add some more to that, mix up some more water effect, and keep building up the ripples. But definitely going to look superb when it's finished. I'm really pleased with where we're heading with it. So I have added some extra width with a couple extra strands, and I think that's enough now. Actually, this angle here is pretty cool. I think that's quite convincing. It'd be nice to have some little smaller strands and stuff, a few droplets, but that's really hard to do. These kind of droplets here are pretty cool. They're super tricky to kind of glue in place. So yeah, I think that's it. I want to give it another coat of the crystal resin. But before we do that, I thought we'd add some ripples, some more detailed ripples. And if I get it in the right light, I actually experimented to see if this was the right step, and I've added some here. So, you know, obviously we've got to kind of think in our minds, what's the timing of this? So, you know, the foot's hitting the ground, it's splashing up, so how much rippling are we going to get at this point? And that's why I've done it here, like a little bit gentle. I think that looks nice, like a moving stream. But certainly around here, I want a little more rippling. So what we're going to do is add some of that now. So this is a really great product. It's water texture from Vallejo, and this is really, really, really easy to use, unlike the crystal resin, which is Well, the crystal resin's easy to use, but you know, you've got to mix it, wear gloves. This is a bit more chill. So open it up. That didn't go too well, did it? So hopefully you can see inside that it's this thick kind of liquid stuff, and it's really thick. So what you can do is, I'm just going to use a sculpting tool and scoop some on, and I can actually just whack up kind of a blob on roughly where I want it. Now this stuff, unlike the crystal resin, you can kind of sculpt it. It holds its shape fairly well, so we can put that on with the back of the sculpting tool, and you can use an old brush or like this, and you can actually sculpt your shapes, and you can get some good height with this, but it will take a while to dry if you have them quite tall. This would be an alternative way to do the splashes, but it's not as highly glossy and it's not as strong, so I do think the way we've done it is the way to do it. It just takes a little longer, but what I'll do is just get this in generally the right place, and I'm going to use that same old brush I used with the resin, and I've actually managed to get most of the crap out, so it's still kind of usable. And we'll just try and sculpt some ripples. You don't have to be super perfect with this, because you can add more later and get the right shape, but obviously I'm doing a nice circular shape coming out from our main splash. And you can also add it to like around the rocks here, and that could be where the water's moving, so you can just create a little splash like that. And then also, if the stream's flowing this way, when it hits the rock here, obviously we're going to have some water moving around those rocks. But it dries perfectly transparent, and it's quite good because it's so white. When you put it on, you can kind of see what you're doing easily, which is why it's a nice product to use. So I'm going to continue doing that, and then we'll take a look when it's dry. This is where I've ended up after brushing it around. So you can see I've got nice circles coming out from the splash. There's, you know, higher ones obviously close to the splash, and I've just kind of tried to fade it out as we get further away. And we can always add more, so I'll see what that looks like when it dries, rather than going super crazy. And don't forget, we have the kind of mellow ones from the crystal resin here. I've also added some around each of the rocks, as if the water's flowing from one direction. I guess if you had a stream without the splash, maybe you would focus on just having that motion and doing it that way. I might add some more around here and these rocks and stuff, but you know, I'm basically doing a little bit of this base every couple days, to be honest, kind of chipping away in between the painting. So I'm just doing a bit of water effects, seeing how it dries, and then adding a bit more. If you're in a rush, then you might approach it in a different way, but I've done a lot of water effects, but I'm still experimenting, trying to do the best kind of effects. So yeah, I'm just kind of doing a little bit at a time, seeing what happens, what works. And yeah, it's been fun. I think I'm going to improve my knowledge of water effects after this. And you can benefit from that, because I'll tell you what I discover. So I'm going to leave this to dry for a day, and then we'll come back to the filming. After you finish the base, I masked it up, and I've given it a nice spray of Chaos Black, because you get a lovely, lovely satin black from that. I foolishly stuck my miniature on, the wolf, so I had to use an enormous bit of masking tape, but he is in there, so there you go. So I'm going to remove all the tape, and we'll see what he looks like. This is definitely one of those please work moments. So yeah, quite a few months have gone into this, so I hope that she still fits. So I've got my gloves on so I can handle her carefully. Please work. Yes, didn't think it was going to go then. Okay, that's the test fit. Quite a bit of movement in the pin, so I'm going to need to glue and hold her in the right position, which is yeah, kind of makes me nervous. Right, let's get the glue on. I think I'm going to glue with the camera off because yeah, this is a scary one. So hopefully I come back with something that's worked. Well, there she is, glued in. I didn't quite get the perfect angle I wanted, but that's being super anal about it. You can see they're kind of looking the same way. I'd like us maybe a teeny bit more turned, but yeah, it works. So yeah, super happy with that. I think I'll take some still photos and we can look through those. But they just look epic together, and the splash effects awesome, and the dramatic shadows work kind of nice on both the figures. Actually, that back view there of the splash looks pretty awesome, and you can see all the ripples too. That's fun. So there's a little bit of a gap here, so I'll need to fill that, probably fill that with some water texture. I could mix up the proper resin, and that would be a lot harder, but just in case, I don't know, for whatever reason I'd like to remove her, I'll have a chance with it like this. So yeah, I'll use a bit of water texture to fill that out, and that's the easiest way to do it. But yeah, that's it. Might add some more moss, some more grass a later point, but awesome. It's a great feeling for me. That's about 3 months on and off of work, so pretty crazy to finally see it finished. And about 3 years of coming up with this idea to do this miniature, so kind of a cool moment for me. So I'm going to add that water texture, and we'll look at some photos. I hope you enjoyed this technique, that it was something new to you, something you might not have thought of. And like I said earlier, it is really fun to do, honestly. You can just stick these bits of resin on. You can see you can cut and paste them together pretty easily, and it just looks great. Yeah, really fun thing to add to your miniatures. And it is sturdy, like I said, it will last. You know, if you hit it, it probably will break, but it is reasonably sturdy. And I've got some models that are 5-6 years old, and this effect is still looking good. One thing I did was actually mix up some of the crystal resin again, and I coated everything with this one last time, and that was to make it super shiny, super coherent, and it actually went over the Vallejo water texture. So the Vallejo water texture is fantastic, as you could see in the video, but it isn't quite as shiny. So I do still recommend the water texture to build up those ripples and stuff, but just a little bit of the crystal resin over that and it will look fantastic. But that's basically it. I don't think these techniques are difficult to do. They take time, but they're, you know, you'll all be able to do it, I guarantee. It's just they're quite unusual techniques, and maybe a bit daunting to try if we don't have the knowledge. But hopefully after this video you can see it's quite straightforward and you can just have a bit of a laugh with it. If you have a go at this, I'd love to see what you do. I've kept some of my splashes that I made up, and I've got a project coming soon which needs some dripping blood, so I'll definitely be showing you that at some point. But it's pretty easy to see how to do it. You can just put some blood effects over these splashes and turn them red, and then it looks great. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you enjoy the result of this miniature. It's probably been my favourite miniature of 2020, which is great because it's a Cult of Paint miniature, and hopefully some of you guys are going to paint this when the Kickstarter delivers. See you next time.